Christian McCaffrey in the open field, inside the 30, inside the 20, McCaffrey touchdown.
Okay, hey Fandom, we are live. Thanks for joining us. We've got Cowboy Joe as always, and Brittany and her husband Tom. And guys, how you doing tonight?
Right?
Lovely.
I'm draft ready. That's what I'm saying. I'm draft ready.
Cool. Well, we've got a good show tonight. We're bringing on Shane P. Hallam in just a second. But real quick, though, guys, I just want you to let you know that, Shane, we had him on the show last year after the draft. He came on and he gave us some excellent information and pointers about, the players that the Panthers picked. Now we get to pick his brain before the draft. So I'm kind of looking forward to this. So,
which is cool.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go ahead and bring on Shane. Shane,
hey.
Welcome to the show, sir. Guys, just so that you're aware, Shane is he's a draft analyst. I've known him for a while. He works for fakepigskin.com as well as Steel City Insider. And we're happy to have you back on the show. How's it going? Shane, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. I appreciate having me. We had a good time last year. So, this will be a flip side of the coin and try to make some hard predictions here.
Nice. Awesome. All right. Well, Shane, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us kind of a little bit what you're doing, what you're up to, and then we'll get into the talk with the prospects because we got lots of questions.
Absolutely. I'm writing right now for fakepigskin.com. I write, mostly about the NFL draft. Twitter at Shane P. Hallam is usually where my stream of consciousness goes. But I've been studying the draft, analyzing prospects since 2004. I was very bad at it back then, but you got to start somewhere and, developed over time. And so, that's basically what I'm doing. I have a podcast, The Devy Marketplace. We talk about college players. I just completed a 7-round mock draft for Fake Pigskin. I have rankings for 2021 and 2022 and 2023 up. We're working hard to never start too early. So,
well, hey, it sounds like you go deep. If you're going all the way into 2023 and such, man, we just want to pick your brain and just find out what you know. As Panthers fans, we're excited for our pick here, our first pick 8. And a lot of people are talking quarterback. They're talking offensive tackle. For those who don't want quarterback, it seems like, hey, let's fix that offensive line first. They're talking about cornerback because, corner is an issue, is a big need for Carolina. But some news real quick, though. I mean, obviously, this is not necessarily breaking news, but the fact that San Francisco moved up to pick 3 kind of puts a little bit of a damper on Carolina potentially getting a quarterback at 8. I mean, they still could get a quarterback at 8, but maybe not the right one that they wanted, their guy, because now they have a team in front of them who also wants a quarterback. So What do you make of that, Shane? Do you think that San Francisco knows who they want, or are they just kind of jockeying for position, hoping to get somebody good?
I don't think they necessarily know who they want. I think they know they need a young quarterback. I think for San Francisco, it's about they have a really good defense. They have one of the best tight ends in the league. They have 2 young electric receivers and a great system. So if they can get a rookie on a rookie deal, then you really have a shot to go to the Super Bowl if they're good, right? So I think between the next 3 quarterbacks, they're going to kind of pick. I think obviously we know Trevor Lawrence is going 1. I think it's pretty clear, and this trade made it clear when the Jets did not even take, didn't even listen to the 49ers for that kind of deal, that they're taking Zach Wilson, the quarterback from BYU, at 2. So I think San Francisco is now looking at the other 3 QBs, looking at Justin Fields from Ohio State, Trey Lance from North Dakota State, and Mack Jones from Alabama, make their choice. And then it becomes, who's the next one to move up. And I think Carolina's in kind of the most precarious position because Atlanta sits at 4 and Atlanta's not going to trade with them. So that becomes a very difficult conversation if a team like Denver, New England, Washington wants to move up. Though they could get ahead. So that's what I think is going to make this fun, is to really see what Carolina does now that San Francisco's made that move. You're down to 2 quarterbacks left. If you have a preference, it's going to be really tough to make sure you get that guy.
Yeah, which is why this is such a huge question mark. It feels like there's, I'm a juggler and there's a bunch of balls in the air, and I'm waiting for them to come down. It could be anyone's game. We don't even know what's going to happen with Sam Darnold with the Jets. I mean, how would you feel if you were Sam right now? I mean, I think he can still play. The question is what the Jets do with him too. But so let's talk about these quarterbacks. And if we had to put let's just say we got the top 5, right? With Trevor Lawrence, you've got Justin Fields, you've got Trey Lance, and you have Mac Jones. What do you feel is your ranking there, Shane? And how do you see those talents? I don't know, it's kind of separating themselves. And if you can talk a little bit about what makes each one valuable or appealing to teams.
Absolutely. I think Justin Fields, to me, is far and away the best of the 3. And I think he's been that way since high school. I feel like their junior years of high school, we knew that Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields were the 2 most talented quarterbacks in the country, and they were both going to the NFL someday. And so I think, to me, we've seen Justin Fields play in the Big Ten at Ohio State, 2 years, multiple years. We've seen him play in really well in big games. I think the Clemson playoff game this past season is really the epitome of what his game is, right? Deep field passing with, good accuracy and touch, very athletic. He ran unofficial in the 4.4s at his pro day. But that wasn't his primary mode. He wasn't a run first quarterback. It was keep your eyes down the field. And Ryan Day's system is interesting because it uses a lot of option routes. One of the knocks we hear about Justin Fields is he's not good at reading the defense or going through progressions. He stares down his receivers too long. Well, that's kind of how the offense is built, is you have to see how those receivers break off on the option routes. If you go back to the playoff game they lost against Clemson, the final play, he kind of pulled the trigger. He pulled the trigger when he had to. He was getting hit, but Chris Olave ran the wrong option. They weren't on the same route, and that's why the interception happened. So that's kind of how the system's built. And so I don't think it's as big a knock on him as it is kind of the system, and it's something that definitely can work. So I think when you combine the athletic ability, I think a really strong zip, mid-range. I think what he struggles with the most is probably some of those kind of post routes, mid-range. He floats those balls to the sideline a bit. But I think he has the talent, the athletic ability, kind of what you want in a quarterback. And I think you put that in Joe Brady's system. I think it'd be exceptional for the Panthers to get him. And I have the next 2 kind of a step below, because I think Trey Lance from North Dakota State has the potential to be really, really good. Only playing 1 year, in the FCS really worries me. I wrote an article for Fake Pigskin after his one game this season against Central Arkansas that he was not a first-round quarterback to me. Obviously, he's going like top 5, but I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. He might be going 3 to San Francisco. You go back to the national championship game, he completed 6 passes. He ran for 200 some yards. And so to me, I think that there's a lot that's left to be desired in terms of what he does under pressure, mentally, how he handles defenses pre-snap. I think that was an issue this year against Central Arkansas. But of the 3, he probably has the best arm. He probably can, he has the best, to me, he has the best kind of wind up. Justin Fields has a little bit of a hitch in his kind of wind up. Trey Lance doesn't have that. And he's probably the best athlete. He's probably a little bit better of an athlete than Justin Fields, especially at his size and height. So there's a lot of potential with Trey Lance. So I don't fault a team for taking him, but I wouldn't want to start him week 1. And then Mac Jones for Alabama is kind of the safe choice, right? You have a guy that has started the same number of games as Trey Lance, 17. So Mac Jones he feels like he's been playing forever. He's played a lot less than many quarterbacks get drafted this high. And he's someone who doesn't have the strongest arm. but I think he's pretty good with his ball placement. He's not going to give you much down the field, but a really, really smart player, right? He can read the defense pre-snap. He's good at, figuring out, going through progressions, getting it to his open receivers, which he had often at Alabama. Now, over 30% of his passes were behind the line of scrimmage. Sometimes we think of Alabama's offense and think of this pro-style system. Not that anymore. It hasn't been for a few years. So Mac Jones isn't exactly dropping back and, throwing it and playing in a pro style. So I think sometimes that can get lost a little bit. I think for him, it's just the winning a national championship, going undefeated, playing in the SEC. I think that's what's really selling people on him. And I have, some skepticism of if he can step in and be, an elite quarterback. And I think if you're taking a guy in the top 10, you really want an elite quarterback. And I'm not sure Mac Jones is that.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty good assessment, especially about Mac Jones. A lot of people are, kind of happy and pleased with his intellect and his ability to read, pre-snap as well as make decisions post-snap. But the athletic ability, right, is missing. And that problem, not necessarily missing, it's just not elite. I guess we'll put it that way.
And that's my issue with him. Like, that's why I can't get excited. Like, within our fan base, Jeff, there's a lot of, mixed reactions when it comes to Mac Jones. I feel like people either want him and are jumping at the chance to take him. And then the other half is like, nah. And I'm on the nah side.
Brittany, are you still, let me ask you this question right now. If you had Trey Lance and Justin Fields available at the same time at pick 8, which is probably not going to happen, who would you take?
I mean, you know how I feel. I love Trey Lance. I do. I was impressed by his athleticism, quite frankly. Sorry, it's been a long day. Arm strength. I loved his highlights. I was very, granted, I understand that it's a different, there's a learning curve going into the NFL because it's a different speed. And, you have players that adjust and then you have players that fall flat. But I liked from what I saw. If I had the opportunity to take both, I would definitely take Trey Lance.
Okay. And I think that Lance and Fields would benefit from Carolina. I think any quarterback would benefit from Carolina and Joe Brady just as well as they would benefit from Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. I just think from a fantasy perspective, if you're looking at the quarterback that lands in San Francisco and the quarterback that lands in Carolina, I think you have to kind of elevate them a little bit as a result of their offensive structure and the coaching. But all right, so Shane, let's just say quarterback is not in the cards for pick 8, and Carolina is looking at a potential offensive tackle because they want to build their offensive line. Obviously, we saw in the Super Bowl how the Chiefs lost their offensive line, unfortunately, due to injuries there in the last couple of weeks before the Super Bowl, and that cost him. Patrick Mahomes was running for his life in that game, and the offensive line is important, especially when you're going to be eventually grooming a quarterback for your franchise. Why not get that set? So if that were the move, what do you have in terms of your rankings of these offensive tackles? And we can start with Penei Sewell.
I have Penei Sewell number 1 still. I know some people have wavered on that a little bit, or, he's not the best tackle in this class anymore, but he didn't play this past season, and so the tape hasn't really changed. Right? When you haven't played this past season, I feel like you should really have your stock get lost. And Oregon's offense is interesting. I think it was an issue scouting Justin Herbert as well, that they do a lot of things that you're not going to get in the NFL, and so about 30% of the snaps you can kind of toss out and not really worry about. But when he had to go one-on-one on the edge, he's such a smooth athlete. His kick slide, I think, is one of the best that I've scouted in the past few years. I think it's probably up there. I think Tristan Wirfs last year, who ended up being a stud for Tampa Bay, I think was very similar in terms of just sliding with ease. What I really like about Penei Sewell, too, is that he's not just this kind of finesse pass blocker, and sometimes that's what you can get at the top because that's what teams really look for. But he has that mean streak. He has that lower body strength. He has a good bend to him. He gets caught sometimes over pursuing a little bit, it kind of anticipating what a defensive end's going to do. So probably his worst plays are when he thinks, he's kind of guessing a little bit what the DN's going to do. So I think it's something that can easily be cleaned up. If he would just kind of stay disciplined, I think he probably would have dominated even more. So to me, I think he should be a top 5 pick in this draft. I think he should be a top 3 pick in this draft, which he's probably not going to be. And I think if you don't get a quarterback, Penei Sewell is probably the best prospect to me in this draft.
Do you see him as a potential Pro Bowler, like a perennial Pro Bowler type of tackle, or is he just the best of a kind of a little bit of a weaker class? Is this a weaker class? Is this a strong tackle class?
I like we have to ask that question because it is a weird class. Usually, like last year, I think we knew it was strong. We knew we had a bunch of guys at the top. This year is not necessarily at the top, but I feel like there's such depth to this class. If you took the brunt of this group, I think it's a really good group, which probably bodes well for a team like Carolina in round 2, if that's really what you want. I think Penei Sewell is a step above the rest of them. I think he has that perennial Pro Bowl potential. It's always can be a little bit worrisome with an offensive tackle. I think that it is a big step up oftentimes. And sometimes for this position, it's not about the competition that you faced often. Like we see a lot of small school linemen do really well. All right, so a lot of it's about those athletic traits. So I think Penei Sewell has that, and I think he's someone that can step in left tackle, day one, blind side, and also be someone in the run game that's going to help you. And that's something that I think some of these other tackles maybe don't have both of those things in terms of my top rating that Penei Sewell does.
And he's only 20, so he's young.
Yeah, he's very young.
He could be around for a while. All right. Well, I mean, Penei Sewell is a possibility. I'm not sure if he gets past Cincinnati at 5 or even Atlanta at 4. I mean, who knows what Atlanta
is. Cincinnati trading out and getting Washington stepping in and taking your quarterback.
See, Washington could do it. New England could do it. Denver could do it. You've got a couple teams who could move up. So I mean, that you can't ignore that.
I could just imagine Ron just salivating on the moment to just put that little knife in the Panthers' backside.
I don't know if he would do that. Plus, I mean, they've got Fitzpatrick and they've got Taylor Heineke. I mean, it's Taylor Heineke. But I mean, I probably gave the Buccaneers the best game in the playoffs last year.
He did.
But all right. So
when we talk about 5, Carolina has the edge, though. Like if Carolina wants number 5, they can get it because Cincinnati's not going to move down to 19. They're not going to want to move down to 15. And so, it may still be costly, but I think that's what's going to be fun is to see how much does Carolina really want it because they'll have that shot.
So let's just say that Cincinnati does take Sewell, offensive tackle, and then it gets to Carolina. They don't go quarterback, but they still are thinking offensive line. What about Rashawn
Slater?
Thank you, Rashawn Slater. I know that he's a little bit shorter for a tackle. He's 6'3", but people say he's way athletic. What can you tell us about him?
I'm a big fan. He's my offensive tackle too. The big question with Rashawn Slater, kind of with that height and arm length, is he a tackle? I think he's one of those players that you say, oh, this is a player who has played center, has played guard, he's played every position, and I'd feel really comfortable calling him an elite offensive guard prospect. But I think offensive tackle, you worry that some of these very athletic, long-armed defensive ends and pass rushers could give him problems. Now, I say that, and then you go back and watch him against Chase Young, and you see him dominate Chase Young from whistle to whistle, and that's what kind of swayed me for him to be the offensive tackle too, a guy that was defensive rookie of the year, and I think a defensive prospect in some of these playoff games. The teams were double teaming him and letting everything else happen. If Slater can handle that one-on-one in a year that Young was very successful within this scheme at Ohio State, then I think there's some real potential there. So the athletic ability, just his movement skills, I think are very, very good. And I think that helps make up for the lack of length and maybe some of the lack of kind of lower body strength is where I worry with him. He doesn't really get that drive in the run game. So that's why I don't have him on the same tier as Penei Sewell. But if you told me, hey, I want someone to protect my quarterback and the blind side of my quarterback, I think Rashawn Slater is a player that can do that. And, it's kind of a draftnik trope, but it's one of those things, well, it doesn't work out at tackle. You can move him inside to guard and have a pulling guard that I think could be really, really successful. So, you don't want to take that guy top 10, but if that's the worst case scenario, then I think you have a nice floor with him as well.
And as far as tackle is concerned, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on tackle here, but I do have questions. And how many tackles do you think are going to go in the first round? And I mean, you've got Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech, Dylan Reduns from North Dakota State, Tevin Jenkins, Oklahoma State, Samuel Cosme, Texas, Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame. Are those all first rounders? And if not, who might be available in the second round for Carolina if they decide to go that way?
In the mock draft I released this week, I have 5 offensive tackles, if you include just offensive tackles, going in the first round. If you want to toss in Elijah Vera-Tucker from USC, who's kind of and I haven't labeled as a guard, but could be a tackle, then 6. So I think that gives you in round 2 a really good group. You mentioned Dylan Reduns from North Dakota State is one of my favorites. Another player that's not like super long, but he has that toughness. I really like how he can do some good things in the run game, driving. They really got him to the second level with Trey Lance often. He was probably the first kind of read for Lance in the read option. They usually try to set it up to his side because he could kind of seal that edge and was really good at that. I think maybe the pass protection skills have a little bit of a question how he holds up the next level, but I think he's big and he's strong and he moves pretty well for his size. I think there's something there. I kind of project and really like Jalen Mayfield, the offensive tackle from Michigan. I think he's going to be in the early 2 mix. He's a player who's kind of the opposite of Reduns, where there's a ton of athletic upside. I mean, he looks the part of a franchise left tackle, but just an inconsistent play. You put on one game and you see a player that you think's top 15. You put on another game and he looks like a 3rd, 4th rounder. So it's about kind of getting that consistency out of him. So I think he's good. And then I think Liam Eichenberg's probably the other one that I'll mention because I think the top 5, Sewell, Slater, Darrisaw, Jenkins, and Cosme will go in the first. I think Eichenberg could. I think he's probably for NFL teams probably their next one up, just because he's like super consistent, good arm length. What he's really good at is keeping defenders away from his body, so it gets very tough to kind of find a way around him. So he's kind of a different player in that sense. Like very few flaws. But he doesn't really flash that tremendous upside that you may see. So sometimes that's good in the second round to get a player like that you can plug in as a starter. Maybe isn't a Pro Bowler every year, but I think he's a player that is intriguing.
Gotcha. Brittany, if the Panthers decide to take an offensive tackle with their 8th pick, are you okay with that? Or are you looking at something else?
Well, listen, I mean, I honestly believe
not quarterback, of course. Right.
As far as, consistency goes and having a real stud of an offensive tackle, the Panthers really haven't had a solid, reliable, healthy guy since Jordan Gross retired. So I would not be upset about it at all if we did go offensive tackle. I feel like it is a need, and you can't have a quarterback and bring in a quarterback that you expect to carry your franchise into the playoffs and beyond if you don't have him protected.
So would you, if they went with corner over offensive tackle, how would you feel?
I mean, I think that we need to address the most glaring. We definitely struggled. We need an offensive tackle, I feel like, and I feel like we do need because Teddy's, a temporary. He's not the answer, and quite frankly, we do need somebody that's going to really be our franchise quarterback.
How would you feel about building that offensive line and then making a move on Russell?
That could happen, right? With the Scott Fitterer connection. I mean, it's.
I mean, here's my issue. Like Russell had said outright, the teams that he would be open to trading to, even though they don't have the funds, so to speak. He said he would be open to going to the Saints. And if you want to go to the Saints, bye. I don't want you. Shane, quick question. Devil's advocate. I know you said the Jets are locked with Wilson. But if the Panthers, right, were able to trade up for, say, the second pick and give up at least 3 first-rounders to get Wilson, do you think that it's worth it? Will he be that good? Do you think?
Is it a worthwhile decision?
Yes.
Yeah, I think making that move to get a quarterback you think could be a franchise quarterback is worth it. I think Zach Wilson has, an absolute rock star ceiling. I think that the potential is endless. The potential for him to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL is there, just with the way he can place the ball and any spot of the field with a good arm. I mean, we saw that consistently this season, every single game. My worry with Zach Wilson, he's my quarterback 3. I have him behind Fields. And to me, the issue kind of goes back 2 years ago, which might be, I might be kind of creating some issues here, right? Because sometimes that can be the problem, especially with quarterbacks, is because of the strange year, BYU did not get to play their schedule. They didn't play the schedule that they had set up, which would have been awesome because he would have faced some good defense. He would have played Oregon. He would have played some really good teams. And I think if he would have did what he did, he would have been quarterback too. You go back to 2 years ago when he was under pressure, when he was playing defenses that confused him pre-snap, he struggled. I think that's the question for me is, can he handle pressure? There's barely any pressure on him all season. And when he did have that, when he had the best defense he played in Coastal Carolina, I didn't think he played bad, but I thought it was a mediocre game. It was a day 2 quarterback kind of game. A couple nice throws. So that's just my worry with him. I'm just not sure if he's going to be able to step in day 1 and say, to a bad team with a bad offensive line and, go and make things happen. Maybe he can, but that's definitely my concern and why, I wouldn't take him at 2 if I was a general manager.
So
fair enough. I mean, that was very well.
They could always take Fields if they moved up.
Yeah, that was great.
They could always take Justin Fields if they move up to 2. But anyway, Shane, I want to talk about the corner position. The Panthers got Dante Jackson. They just acquired Rashawn Melvin through free agency, the veteran from Detroit, and they've got Troy Pride, and Stanley Thomas, Oliver. So that's not the strongest of secondary of corner groups, right? So if they decide to go corner, who's the best corner in this draft? And I'm sure the corners have different strengths, right? So can you break that down a little bit with Patrick Surtain, Caleb Farley, JC, that is his last name.
Horn. Yeah.
Horn, thank you. And those 3 and others, and just kind of give us an idea of what we can look forward to if corner is the pick.
I think that those 3 corners are worth a top 15 selection. I think Patrick Surtain is at 8 would be a rock solid pick. I think if all else fails and that's kind of what you're quote unquote stuck with, I think you could do a lot worse than him. Just because he has that athletic ability. We really saw it on display at his pro day, but even during the season, he's a player that's stuck with receivers that I thought at the time were just much more athletic than he was, not realizing his athleticism because of kind of the size and strength at the line. He's someone that's really good at jamming at the line of scrimmage, taking guys off their routes. And you go back 2 years ago and watch him against Jamar Chase. And Jamar Chase mostly played against Diggs, the current Cowboys corner, and made him look silly. But when Patrick Surtain was on him, Jamar Chase had some problems getting off the line of scrimmage, one thing he's very good at. So, I think that kind of tells me that this is someone that can hang with the best receiver prospect in this class and NFL receivers. So I think he kind of has that. My only issue with him is just that his hips aren't super fluid. I think, and that happens a lot with bigger corners. You don't necessarily need to be like super, dropping your hips and really free range turning. But that's probably the one thing I think that stops him from being like, this is an elite cornerback. So I think he's if you told me, he was going to Ford, Atlanta, that'd be fine with me. Now, I think J.C. Horn is very close. Personally, I think that J.C. Horn was the best cover corner in college football this past year. He is just more technically sound, like a really, really nice back pedal, really good movement. You rarely see him get beat, and he really didn't this past season. I thought every single game was consistent, excellent, and he almost definitely mentally, his football IQ has to be super high because he seemed to know what the receiver was going to do before he did it. Which sometimes can be an issue in the NFL because you don't necessarily get those reads that you might get in college. But in the SEC, it tells me that he's someone that can be really good. So maybe not as physical at the line of scrimmage as Surtain with the upside, but he's someone that can, I think, be a number one. Caleb Farley, I'm a little concerned. He's had 2 back surgeries. I really like him more as a safety. Obviously, didn't play this past season. But I think he's someone that has athletic ability, but is really inconsistent. So I don't quite see him on the same level as the top 2. I know the NFL seems to, but to me, that would not be a good pick at 8. I kind of see him falling potentially because of the back surgeries and some question marks about really what he is when he hasn't played in a year.
Yeah, he's also a little bit older too. He's 22 already.
I see Caleb to the Panthers, Surtain to the Cowboys. That's a no-brainer.
you and Surtain to the Cowboys.
That's a no-brainer.
I feel like copyrighted. I feel like
Union with Trayvon Diggs.
Right, Cowboy Joe.
Hey, quarterback is a need for the Cowboys.
That's true.
But Panthers, I just don't know if that's really a want or a need. I mean, the secondary held up on the second half of the season last year for Carolina. That's why I question why would they want it at that point when it's.
Well, do you really want to play the soft zone all year?
Yeah, they were forced to play the soft zone because they didn't have people who could press coverage and then jam at the line. Shane, what about a slot corner here in this draft? Is there anyone that really sticks out?
Sorry, slot corner?
Yeah, just someone who could kind of play the slot as opposed to an outside corner. Is there one that really kind of sticks out or not quite so much in this class?
I think it's a little bit tougher in this class because I think there are a couple guys that have some ability there. Probably my highest rated is Greg Newsom from Northwestern. He's a player that's starting to get some first-round buzz. So I think he maybe has a shot at getting that. But he's a player that can play the slot. He's about 6 feet tall, 190 pounds. They would slide him in there on nickel and dime packages. So he's someone that I think is good. Maybe is there in the second round for the Panthers. I think that's a possibility. And then I think when you look later down in this draft, we start talking around 3 or 4. I think there's some really good ones. Robert Rochelle, the corner from Central Arkansas, is a really, really good player. He was one of my favorite small school players, had a good game against Trey Lance in North Dakota State, had a really good season. He's someone that has that athletic ability, can run really fast, and it, really redirects receivers really well. So I like him. Trill Williams from Syracuse, the late round guy who had a lot of success tackling. He's a good slot corner that can tackle and be physical, but has some ball skills. And then, I think one of the guys that's just I'm interested to see where he's going to go with Sean Wade from Ohio State, a player who as a freshman looked like top 10 pick because he played in the slot, and then they moved him out and he stunk the last 2 years. And so the question is, maybe he is an elite slot corner. Maybe he's a good nickel corner, and that's what he should be. And you could get a steal in the 4th or 5th round with him if you just don't play him outside and let him get beat by every Alabama receiver by Devonta Smith all national championship.
Oh.
Hey, speaking of Devonta Smith, is a nice little segue here. What happens if the pick at 8 is a wide receiver, right? Because, they lost Curtis Samuel. He's moved on. And Jamar Chase is waiting there. And, of course, we know that Joe Brady had experience with him, right, at LSU. What do you think about that? Is that a possibility? Obviously, I think Jamar Chase is the top receiver, right? Why is he so good? How great would he be in this offense?
I think if you go back and just toss on that tape of him and Joe Brady's offense, you see why he's so good. He's a player that gets off the line really crisp and clean. And even when he doesn't, he gets back up to speed really quickly. In that Alabama game I was talking about, like I said, I think it's something that Patrick Surtain did well and Diggs did pretty well against him. But he recovered numerous times for deep passes or to get open. And really good at making adjustments to the football. His range is tremendous. He has that long range speed. He has some short area quickness, and he's tough. He's someone that can make contested catches as well, even though he's wide open oftentimes. So he's just a player you can move around the field. You can put him on 9 routes. You can put him on out routes. He's just like a very crisp, clean receiver that catches everything comes his way and has that athletic ability. I think he's a slam dunk, and he was doing that at 19 years old. This wasn't Devonta Smith at 22 who was excellent, but Devonta Smith was doing it against 19-year-old corners, and Jamar Chase was doing it against top rookies at the position. So in the NFL right now, so to me he should be the first receiver off the board.
So,
what's your player comp for Jamar Chase?
So after Trevor, I just want to ask this real quick. Would you call Chase the next best available player?
That's a good question. I think I think I'd probably put Penei Sewell above him, and Chase is my number 3 overall. I think I might. I think I'd probably say Jamar Chase number 3 in this class.
Okay,
close third.
Do you got a player comp for Chase, Shane?
Yeah.
Tough one, right?
Yeah, I think it is tough because I almost think he's kind of a smaller, shorter like AJ Green. He doesn't have that size that AJ Green came in with, so that's why maybe he's not quite on that level. But he really plays like AJ Green did at Georgia in terms of physicality, high-pointing footballs. Like I really see on film the comparison, even if the size comparison isn't quite there.
Well, if they nabbed Jamar Chase, that'd be really interesting. All right? You hate to think that you're wasting a pick on a wide receiver when you could really use it in another area, but I don't think that's a wasted pick, Jamar Chase. But let's say they go to receiver a little bit later. Who do you well, first of all, let's rank your wide receivers if we could here, Shane. You've got Devonta Smith, you already mentioned him, Jalen Waddle, Rondale Moore, Terrace Marshall, Elijah Moore?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, him. Name's drawing a blank. So how would you rank your wide receivers, and who's someone that Carolina could potentially target in like the 2nd or 3rd round?
So my receiver rankings are a little bit against the grain in terms of how they will go. I have Jamar Chase 1, Devonta Smith 2. I think that's probably how it goes, or pretty close to it. You can flop those guys. I think Jalen Waddle is going to be the 3rd receiver off the board. He's my wide receiver 5. I think he'll go in the top 15. I like 2 guys that I think will probably go in the 2nd round and would be really good fits for the Panthers. One, I have them taking in my most recent mock draft in the 2nd with Rashad Bateman from Minnesota, a player who's an elite slant runner, which is something that Joe Brady likes to do from the slot. I think Bateman would be such a good fit for that team and give a compliment to DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. He's a very different player. So I think he'll probably be there for that pick. And then I really like Terrace Marshall, the wide receiver from LSU, who was, with Justin Jefferson, who should have won Rookie of the Year, with Jamar Chase there, he was producing and then continued to produce this season until we opted out mid-season. All he does is catch touchdowns and has the size and speed. He's a player, if he goes round 2, I think could be an absolute steal. So those are kind of my top 5 with Waddle at 5. And then I think Rondale Moore and Elijah Moore maybe have a shot if you really just want kind of a smaller, fast, athletic, super athletic after the catch. Those both are in that kind of mold. So if you're looking for just like, let's find Curtis Samuel again, then I think you look at the Moores. I think those are the players that kind of fit within that.
Well, that's interesting. Brittany, if they went receiver, how would you feel?
Only Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
Only Chase? You wouldn't like Terrace Marshall a little bit later, a second-round pick? You think second round, right, Shane, on Terrace Marshall?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's funny. We've got his name, the slant runner. I love that. I love that pick right there for them.
Sure.
Bateman.
Yeah. I could definitely see how that would be a really good fit for us. I mean, especially given that's the way our offense likes to go under Joe. That's a Joe Brady type style.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yep, and it's also in case you lose Robbie Anderson. He's only out for another year. I mean, you don't want to think about that, but players move on. They get better deals. Grass is greener. So you have a rookie waiting in the wings, it's always good to have one.
Yeah.
Rookie contracts. Love them.
For sure.
Cowboy Joe. Cowboys are trading the 10th pick. That's your plan?
Yeah, we should.
What do you want to do?
Rebuild that line.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could do that.
We have the pieces ready for offense. We just got to rebuild that line and work on defense. Now, your pick, I like Moore a lot, and I think Moore could be a potential superstar.
Rondale Moore?
Yeah, if he has the right coaching and gets the right mentorship. I don't know. Panthers should look at him in the second round, but if I see Chase in the first round, I'm gonna do what we did in the Cowboys. Take CeeDee Lamb. We're gonna take Chase.
Oh my gosh! What in the world would the Cowboys do with 4 receivers?
We'll think of something.
Shane, the big knock on Rondale Moore is just the fact that he's been injured quite often, right? And that he is, obviously kind of smallish for his size, but so is Steve Smith. And Rondale Moore at 5'9", 180. I mean, he's pretty much like a Smith clone in a sense, right? Mighty Mouse is his nickname. But should we be concerned about his injuries? And these are more injuries from, obviously college, but I think what his 2019 season, right?
Right. And we've seen, we've seen him be injured multiple times. Not only was it the 2019 season, but, the same injury coming into this year that kind of kept him out. So he's had multiple leg injuries, which is always a worry to me. So I think that is a concern. The other thing is as pro day, he did come in at 5'7" flat. So he's not 5'9". He's not 5'8". He's 5'7".
Okay,
you love that. That's a question.
It matters.
Yeah, I mean it does. And when you look at kind of how they used him was throw the ball in a drag and let him do things after the catch, which he's great at. But he's not. I think some people say, well, I got the small, fast receiver that runs a 4.29 and he can be Tyreek Hill. Rondale Moore, he doesn't get down the field. He's never done that. So I think it's just a specific role for him. And he could be very electric at that role. So I think it's worth a look in the second round. I think that's where you should go. But he's probably not going to be your number one. And the Panthers certainly don't need a number one. They have it. So, maybe that does make him a good fit to replace that Curtis Samuel production.
And, being in the Carolinas here, Clemson's big, obviously, and they've had some success in the past with wide receivers in the NFL. Anything that you can talk about that would be of interest in regards to Amari Rodgers and Cornell Powell, the 2 Clemson receivers in this draft?
I think Amari Rodgers is going to be a top 100 pick. I think he'll probably go in the second or third round. When you talk about slot receiver, he's another player that's really, really good at that and could be a fit, for a team like the Panthers, for a team like the Ravens, where his dad is the wide receivers coach, T. Martin, the former Tennessee quarterback. Yeah, so I think Amari Rodgers is going to get taken pretty high. He was productive this year and really came on that second half of the year. Cornell Powell, I think he'll get drafted. I think he's kind of a late special teamer. He's not big. He runs a 4.6. Like he's just not going to be a starter in the NFL. So I think Rodgers is kind of the best Clemson prospect outside of the quarterback and running back when we talk offensive weapons.
Gotcha. And the Carolina two receivers, Daz Newsom and De'Ami Brown. Any interest there?
I really like De'Ami Brown. I don't know where he's going to go. I think he should be a second-round pick, and if he is, wouldn't surprise me. He has the production. He has that deep speed. I think he's someone that could be a steal. If you told me he went in the 4th round, that wouldn't surprise me either, which I think would be well worth it. So I think if you need a deep threat, I think De'Ami Brown is a really good player to take. He's my wide receiver 9 in this class. I like him more than players that are going to go ahead of him. So I'm interested in that. Daz Newsom, another guy that struggled in his pro day. I really like what we saw in that final game from him. So I think he gets drafted. I think he should. But the upside just might be a little bit capped in terms of what he can do in the NFL. He's just, he's once again small, slow, usually doesn't get it done, and teams aren't super interested.
So one other player that I want to mention here in regards to receivers is Kyle Pitts. It's possible that Kyle Pitts at pick 8. I mean, they just got Dan Arnold, right, from Arizona, also played with New Orleans and Joe Brady, so he's familiar with him there. But Kyle Pitts, I'm hearing a player comp for Kyle Pitts is Calvin Johnson or LeBron James. First of all, I mean, this is hilarious, but Kyle Pitts, is he between great and elite? Is he already elite? I mean, what are we talking about here with Pitts, and could he work in the Joe Brady offense?
I'd be interested to see it. I think Kyle Pitts has just such a unique skill set. He's someone that can catch anything within his radius and did that many times at Florida. He is kind of a receiver in a tight end's body. Don't put him in line and ask him to block. I think you'll be disappointed. But that's not what you're going to be paying him for and taking him in the top 10 to do. He's there to catch passes. So my thing with Kyle Pitts is just where do you play him? I think if you pop him outside and hope for Calvin Johnson, he's not that athletic. I think you might be disappointed. And then, if I want to play him in a slot or a more traditional tight end role, I think it could be some problems there. So my fear for him is just fit. Like, I think he's a great athlete, a great receiving threat. But if a team brings him in and puts him in line, what happens with tight ends is usually those guys taken that high aren't great blockers. And so they got to work all rookie year to get up to snuff blocking. And you kind of lose that edge going against NFL talent.
So Shane, not to cut you off, but would you say that tight end, that the biggest drop off is after Pitts?
I don't think there's anyone that really touches him. I mean, I think Pat Freiermuth from Penn State is kind of that, inline two-way blocker, short range, soft hands catcher. I mean, no one has the athletic ability and upside of Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, my comp to him is Vernon Davis. I think he has that kind of athletic ability and upside. Yeah. And Vernon Davis was great, but was Vernon Davis worth the top 5 pick he was taken at? I think that's up for debate. And tight end sometimes I think is tricky. When you think of like who's the last elite first round tight end, it's hard to come up with because it is such a nuanced and difficult position to transition to the NFL with.
Well, it's definitely going to be somebody here at 8, and I think we're going to be happy with it. Then now we just have to wait. We don't wait 30 days.
The waiting game is probably the toughest part. Like when you're anticipating what your team is going to take. Like I remember when the Panthers went all defense last draft. I was like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it's a playmaker. Obviously, that's important. Yeah. That's we're looking forward to that.
I care more about someone who could come in and just make a difference, even if it's not completely there yet. That you're seeing spurts that with time and with development that they will be that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. I'm looking forward to whoever they pick. Building a defense. If it's defense, of course, getting the offense back up to speed. You got McCaffrey coming back. Got to figure out who is going to be quarterback. If it's Teddy Bridgewater, I mean, he wasn't that bad. I mean, it's just he struggled in the red zone, but they also didn't have McCaffrey, so that's an issue. You've got your defense, hopefully, coming of age, getting stronger. So there's lots of options here for Carolina. Let's see. Parting thoughts here.
Here, I'll give you something. This can go out to all of you for the Panthers. What's the dream pick at 8 for the Panthers? Like the player you guys would jump up and down for, and what's your realistic pick?
Are you asking everybody?
That's for the room.
For the room. All right, I'll take it first. So I think Jamar Chase would be awesome. I think he'd be great as a pick, but I'm not sure they're going to go wide receiver there. I would love to see them get a big name corner because they haven't had that in a long time, and that would really help their pass rush. I could go for a tackle. I could also pick a quarterback. And you know what? If they do draft Trey Lance, and they have Teddy Bridgewater, start Bridgewater. Let Lance learn. And we'll see how that goes. But I'm just excited to see who that pick is going to be. Cowboy Joe, your thoughts here. Put on your Panthers hat.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah. I think Chase is, if he's there, there's no way you bypass him. There's no way.
I think Joe Brady would be like, please.
Yes. We can make it work kind of thing.
Right.
We'll make it work. Realistic pick, I think it, just like you said, Jeff, I think Bridgewater didn't have a bad year. I think, he just had some pieces missing, and those pieces were the offensive line. And if we build an offensive line around Bridgewater and then hold out to maybe get another a year or two, find another quarterback that fits the need, then yes. But I don't think quarterback is your glaring need right now. I think it's that line. Right now, that line is hurting both your running back and your quarterback.
It's interesting that you mentioned line because next week's show, we're going to have Matt Batanti on, who is our offensive line expert. We had him on last year, too, and he can talk to us all about our line that we have now, right? Cameron Irving that we just brought in. Greg Little, where is he with his progress? Pat Elflein, who they brought in from the Jets and also Minnesota. John Miller, who they re-signed. So Taylor Moton, who was one of the top tackles in free agency that they tagged. So looking forward to that show. But before we get ahead of ourselves there, Shane, let's
I gotta give my dream pick.
Oh, sorry. I don't mean to skip you.
Hi, I'm here. So my dream pick would be obviously Trey.
Yep, I know you like him.
Right. Realistic though, Slater. I'm gonna go Slater. Realistic.
Feels the need, and he'll be there.
Yep.
He might be there. We'll see. All right. Well, Shane, any thoughts on who you think Carolina would be a splash pick there?
I think who I want them to take and who they will take are going to be the same person. I think Justin Fields will be a Carolina Panther at the end of the day. I think they're going to move up to 5. I think they're going to take him. I think San Francisco is going to take Trey Lance at 3, and Carolina will find their way into Justin Fields. And I think that you'll eventually have a really happy fan base in a few years.
How about that? Hey.
All right. That's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it pays off.
The best NFL quarterback from Ohio State was Mike Tomczak, but you know what? Ryan Day is a different animal, and he's the one who produced Justin Fields. So I mean, who knows? Maybe that streak will stop with bad quarterbacks from Ohio State in the NFL. I kind of hope it does. But all right, well, Shane, let's wrap this up. Tell us again where people can find you, what you're doing, and anything else you want to plug.
And thanks for coming, by the way.
It's always a pleasure.
I've learned a lot from you.
Good. Well, I'm glad. It's always a pleasure to come on here. It's always a good time. You can find me on Twitter at Shane P. Hallam. Check out fakepigskin.com. You can see everything there. And if you check my pinned tweet, if you want my 7-round mock draft, you want my rankings for the next 3 years, they're all up there. Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Absolutely. Thanks again for watching us here, Fandom. We appreciate you joining us and hanging out and giving us some comments. And we know there's a lot of podcasts out there, and we're thankful that you have chosen to watch us. So thank you so much for that. We look forward to next week when we talk with Matt Battanti, offensive line expert at draftdaddy.com. If you want to look him up, at draftdaddy.com. And we thank you, Shane. Thanks again for coming on and giving us, enlightening us on these players that Carolina might target, and just your knowledge, man. We love to soak it up, and we appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
It's great.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have an awesome night. We'll see you next week.
You found it.
Okay.
McCaffrey in the open field, inside the 30, inside the 20. McCaffrey